How's it going, everybody? We talked and alluded to this in a new video just a couple days ago about Version1, obviously a team that I did consulting and contracting work for 3 years for. Got to know the organization pretty dang well, got to know the ins and outs of the company quite a bit. And while I never signed an NDA, it is not professional for me to do the tell all and leak all. But we will bend that rule a little bit to be a bit critical today. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Version1 has officially closed their doors. If you guys haven't heard the news, V1 is no more. They are done. The organization slowly said their final thanks to the last two on their roster. This one being Daniel, and then a video for Beast Mode. And the reason why they did these two last is because of the conversation that has been ongoing, as you guys know, over the last few months with the merger between G2 and Version1. There was conversations about how potentially it was Complexity, but Complexity and their parent company with GameSquare decided to acquire FaZe. But G2 has put a lot of their money in, and we've been speculating about what is the benefits for them doing this. If I'm G2 as an organization, what do I get out of Version1 by acquiring a company that clearly is trying to just save face? They're trying to make sure that all the investment that they put in the last 3-4 years between Call of Duty, Valorant, both men and women's teams, as well as Rocket League, all the money that they spent, how can we break even? How can we make sure that we don't do this? And that's what ownership is looking at. If I'm the WILL family that spends and foots a majority of the bill, how can I make it so this investment that I took isn't such a bad one? And an easy way to do this is by saying, hey, we're up for sale. You can take and pick apart our IP. You can get whatever you want, whether it be the teams, the players, whatever it is. You can take whatever you want, and you're just going to pay us a bunch of money. And that basically gives us an even split. So that has kind of been the conversation of what is the reasoning behind that. I thought about it in a couple different ways. While yes, Beast Mode and Daniel are great players, is it worth their buyout cost to acquire an entire company to get those two? And if it happens to be something that is thrown into the deal, awesome. The number one reason is, in my opinion, is if G2 wants to get into CDL. They want to get into Call of Duty with it being a franchise league. The only way they can do so is by acquiring a spot from a previous franchise, which in this case is the Minnesota Rocker. And because of that, that means that, you know what? What is that spot worth? What is that going to do? Are we going to be able to just take it over and then continue the same team that the Rocker has? Or are we going to go with something completely different? And that has happened. That has finalized. They did talk about, this comes out from their COO, Brett, who we love and adore, saying that, hey, they've entered a strategic partnership with G2 Esports in which V1 ownership will become the G2 shareholders and G2 will receive operating rights. So the ownership team, which is the WILL family and stuff like that, is now a strategic partner, which means, hey, WILL family, which owns the Minnesota Vikings, clearly you guys have a lot of say and a lot of power, which this is where I'm going to be critical towards the tail end. So they are now shareholders in G2, which means, you know what? G2, despite being an esports organization, now has some traditional sports bigwigs in the room, which gives them some buying power, might help for marketing. Could be a very fruitful relationship for G2, as well as the WILL family, as they kind of keep their eye on the esport. Outside of that, the Call of Duty team is now G2. G2 is going to probably have new branding, new namesake, whatever they do when they come into Call of Duty. But because of that, V1 as a brand ceases operations. We no longer field competitive teams. We no longer do content creation. You already know they let go of Chrissy and all their others. But V1 no longer exists. This is something I told you guys a long time ago as they were laying off countless staff. They say thanks to everybody that was involved. We're grateful for the opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And then our ownership's group's long-term commitment to esports remains strong. And this is where I call, are you sure about that? They, to my knowledge, had a 10-year commitment in esports. They went about 4. And then after they did that, they laid off like 99% of their staff. So you now have a bunch of people who are without a job in an oversaturated market. And you're trying to say you're committed to esports. To me, that feels very corporate-y, but to be critical, and I say this as someone who met a lot of people at that organization that I love and adore and that I care of. I've met some of the WILL family, wonderful people. They really care. But to lay off as many staff as you do in the middle of the most oversaturated time in esports, when finding jobs and security and everything is being cut thin, and now you have a strong relationship with G2 that looks out for your best interests. Like, even Brett probably will never work in esports again. Like, it taints it for me that you are laying off all of your staff, all of your content team, your marketing team, your event staff, all those people are being laid off. And to say that you're committed to a long-term commitment, you now have a good financial partner with G2. You get to be part of the conversations and learn about what they're doing, which, again, it's a smart business decision. I'm not here to criticize. What the Wolf's doing is very intelligent because it gets rid of the risk of the finances. Like, they were lighting money on, like, so much money was being spent at V1. It's crazy. Like, you can't say there's a long-term commitment when you had a 10-year plan for version 1 and then you fulfilled 4 years of it, sold the entire company because of an article from Forbes, and then are now partnering with G2, who's in a great financial place. And by all means, G2 is going to have to operate very, very effectively and efficiently for the next few years because financially they spent all the extra capital they had. They got rid of their New York office. They've reduced as much as they could. Carlos is no longer there. They're operating very intelligently. They're doing some things that I love for their employees that are very, very smart. But, like, G2's budget is capped. They're done. They're committing to the Valorant. They're committing to Call of Duty. They've got the Rocket League team that they're probably spending a lot of money on and expecting success for. But outside of that, they got to stay the same. So to me, it kind of taints the feeling of it all. But the big thing to understand, yeah, BMO Daniel going to G2 with Atomic. Expect that to be a top 2 team in NA and going for a chance to try to compete in majors. Outside of that, they now got a Call of Duty team. They also did the Valorant thing that has been let go. All their content creators are let go. They didn't retain any of those. And all the former staff are either jobless or trying to find a new home elsewhere. And it really frustrates to see because there was a lot of people I know that moved from different countries or wherever who had to acquire visas to go live there locally just to find out a few months later they got nothing. That hurts. That is something that you've seen all over LinkedIn. You've seen it all over the timelines. The amount of people that have been laid off. That is a product of the decisions that ownership team made. It feels poor. It really feels poor. And unfortunately, people are just going to forget about it and move on because that's what happens on the internet. But, like, it sucks. It really, really sucks. And this has nothing to do with me. I was never part of version 1. I never worked for them as an employee or as a content creator. I was purely contracted. They would hire me for an event to MC or host or whatever. I'd do that job, and then that's as far as the relationship went. So, yeah, it's tough to see a lot of people you care about laid off with nothing to find. It sucks. So, writing's on the wall for a lot of people in esports. This is not the only organization this is going to happen with. We've seen this numerous times, as you guys have already seen recently, like I mentioned, with Complexity and FaZe. This is not the last time you're going to see this stuff happen. So, again, more esports stuff, but that G2 roster, it's not officially confirmed by G2, but this tells you everything to know. The 2 players have been released. V1 has been acquired by G2 with the Call of Duty team, and expect the players to be shortly after. So that's going to do it for this update. If you guys have any additional questions, comments, concerns, there's a lot of things that I'm not talking about because I can't. Well, I can. It's not under NDA, but I'm not going to do it for professional reasons because it's not the right place to do it. So with that in mind, if you guys have any additional questions, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments down below. I'll try to answer what I can, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.